Hello everyone and welcome to our catch-up online session of our timetable parent meeting that we had this week for Year 3 and Year 4 parents. In the meeting we discussed the importance of times tables, and I really appreciate you coming to catch up with us because it means that you can find out how we teach times tables in school and help your children at home in a very, very similar way. So, why do we teach times tables and what is the importance of them? Well, times tables underpin every element of maths that we teach. As the children move through the years, they're going to experience area, fractions, percentages, algebra, all sorts of different styles of maths. And if they've got a really good foundation of knowledge with their times tables, they're going to access that maths really easily because a lot of it is multiplicative thinking, and if they've got the core skills from these times tables, they're going to be able to access that learning much faster than those who haven't got the solid foundation that we're trying to work on in our earlier year groups in this school. What learning times tables also helps is being able to access things like arithmetic papers much quicker for questions that are slightly longer and require a bit more work. So in the example here, we've got 34 multiplied by 8. That's a long multiplication style question, and knowing the multiplication facts that are within that problem will help us get to a final end goal much quicker. We've also got division, which is the inverse of multiplication, and knowing our multiplication facts really securely will allow us to then reverse them and understand our division facts and achieve division style questions much quicker too. Finally, we've got things like sequential multiplication, where there's multi-steps to the problem, and in this case you have to do 3 times 8 first, and then you have to multiply by 5 to get your final answer. And being able to know the steps and know the times tables that support in getting the final answer at an earlier age is going to make it much more beneficial and much more efficient for children as they move through our school. What we also want to do is make sure that we can use the times table knowledge that children have from previous year groups and build on that to achieve new and learn new times tables. So for example, in year 2, the children need to know their 2s, 5s and their 10s. And the way they learn that, once they've learned their 2s and they move on to their 5s, they can double their 5s and count in 10s. When they get to year 3 and we add the 3s, the 4s and the 8s, they can use their 2 times table knowledge to learn their 4 times tables because they can double the multiples and find the links between those 2 times tables to sort of lock it in a bit quicker and a bit more effectively. So learning times tables helps to learn new times tables. And what it also does, it keeps children engaged with maths. It lets them explore problems at a much deeper level, and they can reason and problem solve and express their thinking mathematically and multiplicatively when they're reasoning around all sorts of problems. It keeps them motivated because we are constantly hearing, and I'm sure you do at home as well, that children, they come across a problem and they say, I don't know that times table, and they sort of give up, and we don't want them to be demotivated. We want them to really push through and try and work out those times tables if they don't know them, or because they've practiced them, they can fluently recall them, and those brick walls tend to crumble and we can fly through questions that they previously struggled with. So it builds confidence and it just fosters a love of learning that will take them all the way through secondary school as well, because they're not hitting as many obstacles along the way. Also, we use multiplication all the time. As adults, I don't think we realise, because it's so sort of embedded now and routine every day, that we use times tables to help work out quantities in a recipe, or dividing when we're sharing a bill, or even working out fractions when we are calculating percentage decreases in price, for example, if something's on sale. So we all know that a child who understands that 4 times 12 is 48, if they've got a really secure understanding of that, they can do the inverse and know that division facts. So when they see that their favourite PlayStation game, which is normally £48 and has a quarter off the price, or is 25% off, they know that they need to take away 12 because there's 4 12s in 48, and they can sort of visualise it and block it out and use that as an offensive tool to persuade you guys to buy that PlayStation game for them. So having that knowledge is really, really beneficial, and like I say, it just applies to so many different areas of maths. To test children's retention of times tables, the government thought it'd be a brilliant idea to introduce a test for Year 4 pupils called the Multiplication Tables Check, or what we lovingly refer to it in school as the MTC. The purpose of the MTC is to determine whether pupils can recall those times tables fluently, which is essential for future success as mathematicians throughout their entire lives. What it helps us to do is identify children who have not yet mastered their times tables so that we can provide additional support, whether that be through intervention, through liaising with you guys and making sure that you can support at home as well, and knowing where the gaps are and filling those to ensure progress moving forwards. It is an online test. Children complete 25 randomly generated questions on an iPad, and they type in their answer when the question appears and they submit that answer. Now, they do only get 6 seconds to answer each question, so the test only lasts for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a very, very short-lived test. There's no pause in the test, there's no not doing the test. It's compulsory for all children, and to pass the test you have to have achieved full marks. Now, like I say, this is for Year 4s, but the Year 3 parents need to be aware that this is coming up in a year's time. Your children will be sitting the test this year on June the 1st, and we've got a 2-week window from June the 1st to actually complete the test. When the children sit the test, they'll go into small groups and they'll be really comfortable because they've had lots of practice. They've tried lots of practice tests in a similar way, and they've done lots of practice at home as well, with your help and with our support to make sure that they can achieve and be comfortable and familiar with the questions that are going to pop up. As I said before, they're randomly generated, so we don't get a choice of only giving them their favourite times tables like we can sometimes do on Times Table Rockstars. It is up to the children to know all of their facts up to 12 times 12 by the end of Year 4. And that's why it's so important that the Year 3 parents are also watching this as well, because your role in that is making sure your children by the end of Year 3 can do the 2s, 5s and 10s from Year 2, but also know the 3s, 4s and 8s, ready to then learn the others in Year 4. Questions pop up really thick and fast with the MTC. In the 6 seconds that you have to read the question, understand what it's asking, have a bit of processing time, do the calculation, type in the answer, press the enter button, and you've got to do that within that very, very small window. There are no access arrangements that we can put in place for this test, so we can't offer extra time. It is always 6 seconds for every child, and the pass rate, like I say, is 25 out of 25. You have to score 100% on this test, and that is what's classed as a pass. Anything less than that is technically a fail, although as a school we appreciate that not everybody's perfect and not everybody can achieve that on a test. Even as adults, we wouldn't achieve 100% on a test all the time. It might be an off day, or we might sneeze and our finger slips and press the wrong button. Anything can happen, and there is no way of arguing the fact that you did put in the right answer. When we had some parents doing it in the room, it said their end result was 19, and they were like, yeah, but actually I got 22 because I just typed it in, but I didn't press enter in time. Well, in real life, in the actual test, that wouldn't count, and 19 would be your final score, even though you could have probably achieved better if the time allowed. There's also no way of resitting the test. When you do it in Year 4, you only do it once, and that score sort of stays with you. What we are finding is that children in Year 6 across the nation perform much better in their arithmetic tests if they have passed their MTC. So we want to try and secure that success for our children and make sure they are achieving that now. Between each question, they get a little 3-second rest to sort of relax slightly, recalibrate, but then it does fire up the next question quite quickly. Like I say, there's a 2-week period from the 1st of June, and we can administer the test at any point. And we'll be doing that in small groups just in case a child doesn't feel comfortable on the day. It gives us a bit of wiggle room if we need it to make sure that everyone's feeling the best that they can to tackle that test. The only way to resit the test is not based on mathematical ability, unfortunately. Although there's an adult in the room, they're only there for technical help. We can't offer any support for the children. It's got to be independent. However, if a fire alarm goes off halfway through, or the Wi-Fi goes down, for example, we can apply to resit the test in that circumstance, but that's only that external factor, not mathematical ability. So if we see them getting it wrong, unfortunately, there's no second go with this. They only get the one chance. The way that we can practice this in the same style is to use something called MathFrame. It's an online website that has an MTC emulator. It allows you to test only the times tables that you're doing. So year 3 parents, you can tick the 2s, 5s and 10 box and make sure they're secure with their year 2 times tables before moving on to the year 3 and ticking the 3s, 4s and the 8s. But by year 4, they do need to be practicing all of those as mixed times tables. You can also set the time on MathFrame, so please do play around with adjusting the difficulty, but try, if you can, to make sure the end goal is always to practice 6 seconds, just like the MTC, 25 questions, just like the MTC, and obviously we're aiming high. We want all children to be able to achieve 25 out of 25, get that 100% because they're familiar, they're not panicking when those questions come up because they've had lots and lots of practice. There's a QR code on the screen now which will take you to the MathFrame multiplication test game, and you can have a go at that just like the parents did in our room, or you can save this as a screenshot now so that you can access it on a device like an iPad later on, and you can start to use this as a tool to practice at home. There are, of course, lots of ways to practice at home. We'll talk about those in a second. What I want to show you first is a bit of reassurance and a bit of debunking of times tables, because there are an awful lot of them to learn, and they are facts that just have to sort of stick in our heads. In this video, it talks about why there's not as many as we think. So we're going to watch this together, and I hope that it's beneficial for you and puts you at ease slightly, because this simplifies the process a bit and should reassure some children that there's not all that many to learn.
We have to learn our times tables all the way up to 12 times 12.
So how many is that?
Well, 12 times 12 is 144, so it's 144 times tables to learn.
But there are no 1 times tables, so it's only 121.
121 is still a lot.
The 10 times tables are super easy, so we can take them out too.
Okay, so it's 100.
And most of the 11 times tables are dead easy, so we can forget about them as well.
That leaves 84.
And the 2 times tables are really easy. They're just doubling, so we can take them out too. Times tables come in pairs, like 5 times 12 and 12 times 5. They have the same answer.
60.
Yeah. So if we know these times tables, we don't have to learn those.
So we only have to learn 38 times tables. I can do that.
Me too.
Now, obviously, I'm not saying that it's easy by any means. However, that video does show that there are less than we probably think. Because times tables are commutative, the numbers can be swapped, and that allows us to draw on previous knowledge to access new times tables and ease the cognitive load on your brain when you're trying to remember all of those facts. If you've got a child that's struggling on a particular times table, there are lots of different ways that we can support them at home. If they're doing the 2s, 5s and 10s because they're in year 2 or year 3, just moving into year 3, you need to make sure that you are practicing just the times table that they need to know. They might be really good at the 5s and the 10s because they link together. Obviously 10 is double 5, so the multiples are just double. If they're struggling with their 2s and counting in 2s, only focus on that test that they're struggling with, on the times tables that they're struggling with. We don't want to bombard them or overload them. We want to work on one section all the way through so that children aren't confused and aren't trying to work on loads and loads of them at once. As a school, we teach times tables as half-term blocks. So they might be doing the 7 times table all through one half-term. It is not a case of mixing them up because we want the children to really focus and really ingrain those facts. What we also want to do is make sure we start with counting or finding songs or chanting, the same sort of methods that we learnt when we were at school of just counting and rote learning those numbers so that they become really, really familiar. whilst you're in the car or while you're walking to school. You can chant those facts and make sure that children become they just need to ingrain them in their brain, because I'm pretty sure that that's how you remember, and there'll be certain patterns like 1 times 8 is 8, 2 times 8 is 16 that you've gotten used to, because that's how you learn at school. And we can use the same style with children as well. But there's also the more fun ways. If you look on YouTube, if your child's struggling with the 3 times table, for example, there'll be a Taylor Swift song that they can dance around to that has the words changed to the 3 times table, and that just becomes a bit more memorable for them if they're really struggling in that area. What we also want to do is write out our times tables in order. When we're first learning them, we do have parents that say, oh, should I test them like quite quickly? No, we want the children to sort of become acclimatized to the times table over a gentle amount of time and a long period. So they can write them out slowly, just day by day. And let's say they're doing the 3s, for example, they could do the 3, add 3 method and know that the next multiple is 6, and then add another 3. And get 9. There are lots of different ways that they can build that up as they go. And sort of creating the timetable and formulating it in your head makes it a very memorable experience for the children as they're working through. So writing them out in order slowly, no time pressures. What you can then do is add the time pressure in as a secondary sort of element. We want the children to be able to verbalise their times table. So if you were spot checking them in the car and you quick like 2 times 4, you want them to be able to say 8, but we also need to practice writing them down, because the MTC doesn't factor in a verbal response. Sadly, we can't just talk to the iPads and have them know what our answer is. We do need to factor in that typing time, and practicing writing them just adds that. I know it's milliseconds, but every second counts when you're only dealing with 6-second blocks. We then want to make sure that we are randomising those facts. We want to remove the order, remove the logic, and really just try and make sure they're ingrained and children are remembering them in any order that you throw at them. You might do 7 times 4, and then 9 times 4, and then 2 times 4, then 5 times 4, and make it random and have them jump around once they're secure with that. We don't want to build them up too soon. There are lots of tools online that can help you. One of the children's favourites is Times Table Rockstars, and every child in the school has a login for that. So please make sure, if you don't have it, contact your class teacher and they will support you in making sure you've got everything you need. They can also point you in the direction of MathFrame if you lose or forget to write that down. But we also use Hit the Button as well, which is a fun sort of reaction game where they press the right answer. And again, you can set what it is going to be testing them. If you're a year 3 parent, please don't feel like any of this is just year 4. It is definitely like they're all customizable. You can adjust the difficulties and really go into those settings to make them suitable for your children at the ages that they're practicing. Finally, I just want to talk through some of the methods that we sort of talk about at school to learn a new times table. One of the first rules that we teach children is that anything multiplied by 0 is going to be 0. So that's the first sort of answer in that box there. And again, there's a possibility that they might get tested on a question such as 0 times something to make sure they know that fact. Then my first multiple is always the times table that I'm doing. I can fill in my easy ones quite simply. If I know 2 times 3 because I've done my 2 times table the year before, I can then do 3 times 2 instead and swap those around and know that that's 6. What we can start to do is realising that we're adding 3 each time is just follow that pattern along and add 3 to make 9, and then add 3 to make 12, and so on, all the way up the times table. And that's additive thinking. We're just adding on the same multiple each time, and we're just growing that times table. That builds familiarity, and once they've written it down, they can use that as a tool to help them access some quickfire questions. So now I've got that written in front of me, I could say, right, what is 4 times 3? And a child can find that on here and start to become familiar with those numbers. What we can then do in a year later, for example, when they're in year 4, we know that they're secure with their 3 times table. We can start to use the 3s to help us learn our 6s, because every other multiple of 3 is in the 6 times table, Or another way to remember it is if you double a number from the 3 times table, you get the 6 times table. So it works in 2 different ways. So 1 times 6 is 6, and then if I double this 6, I get 12, which is also that multiple from the 3 times table. Same again, I can double the 9 and get 18 and have 6, 12, 18. Or I can take the 6th multiple of the 3 times table and build it up that way. There are obviously the known facts as well, so we know that anything multiplied by 0 is 0. We normally have children that, because they know their 10 times table from year 2, can say, right, well, 6 lots of 10 is 60. We learned that earlier, so they can fill in those gaps there. Now, using known facts is really important, and that's what we want to focus on in this last example here. Known facts being 0 times 4 is going to be 0, because anything multiplied by 0 is 0. They know the 2 times, which is 8, because they learnt that in year 2. They know the 5 times, because they learnt that in year 2. So 4 times 5 is 20. And they know the 10 times, because they learnt that in year 2. So straight away, we're building up quite a big sort of spread of this times table. And yes, there are gaps, but there are things that we can do to fill in those gaps. We know the 11s are a very, very simple times table. With the 11s, if we're doing the 4s and it's times 11, we know that the answer is going to be 2 4s, because it goes up as 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, and children really enjoy that pattern that's in the 11 times table. We can add 4 and sort of mix the methods here to get our 12 times and get 48. I can halve 48 and get my 6 times, because I know that that's going to be 24 if I halve 48, because half of 12 is 6. So it's linking these multiples together and all of these facts, and there's actually something quite magical in here, because there's so many links from so many different times tables, and it can actually be quite, I'm going to sound really nerdy now, quite exciting when you unpick the patterns that are in here. Again, if I want to look at the 3s, I can halve the 6s, so I can go either down or I can add 4 from the one above and build in these adjacent facts. They're next to each other and they're quite easy to work out. 8 add 4 is going to be 12, but that obviously half of 24 is 12. Now, the 3 is really interesting because 3 times 3 is 9. So if I times the 12 by 3, I can get 36, and that helps me with the 9 lots of 4 in this example as well. I can just keep adding 4 if I wanted to build this up, and I've used my known facts as sort of anchor points to make sure that I'm keeping this in a nice sequential order. I'm going to add 4 again to 12, or I could double my 2 times 4. So double 8 is 16, and that's going to go in there. And again, I can double my 4 times to get my 8 times. And there's lots of patterns in here. So double 4 times 4 is 16, and double that is going to be 32. And oh look, I've built up my entire times tables with facts that I know, either by doubling, halving, adding 4, or just using my knowledge from the previous year group. So I know this looks really complicated, and we'll let our teachers do all of the hard work in making sure children learn these effectively. But these are some of the ways that you can help to support at home if children are struggling. What we also suggest is use any items that you've got around the house. Got some buttons lying around, chocolate or clothing buttons, either works. It could be pasta, it could be teddies, and put them into the groups of those times tables and counting them that way. That can be really effective in just helping children become familiar with those numbers. As they're climbing the stairs, the first step might be the first multiple, so they could do 4, 8, 12, 16 as they're climbing those stairs, and use that as a tool as well. Finally, like we said before, spot checks in the car, spot checks on the walk to school, grouping anything that they see in sight, taking them around the supermarket and saying, right, I'm buying 4 lots of this item, which is £8, how much is that going to be? And having them do the maths with you and for you, and really support them, give it a real life context, give it meaning, and sort of make them live and breathe times tables so that they feel so comfortable and that it's just a normal part. Some children get really anxious around maths, and there really is no need if we just build that into their daily lives. So, a massive thank you for joining me and catching up with this video and taking your time out of your schedules to watch this. I really appreciate it, and we really appreciate, as a school, your support in making our children achieve the best and being the best that they can be. If anyone's got any questions, please send me a Seesaw message following this video, and I'm more than happy to answer anything that's any queries that have popped up as I've been talking. Any links that you need, speak to class teachers. But I hope you have a lovely half term, and I will see you all on Monday the 24th of February. Thanks again. Bye for now.